This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
And so the beat goes on for Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's Thursday, December 1st. What's happening? Nick Alberga, as you can see, flying solo for another edition of Leafs Morning Take. Lots to get to on today's show. Of course, Jay Rosehill, as per usual. We buy in a few for another edition of Three Hits with Rosie, and I think he's going to be feeling mighty optimistic once again about the Maple Leafs. What a month of November. 11-1-3. 18 and counting, of course, for Mitch Marner. He'll go for the franchise point streak record in Tampa. The Leafs topped the Sharks 3-1 on Wednesday night to win their fifth straight. They've also extended their point streak to 10 games. That's probably the underlying storyline nobody's really talking about. A 10-game point streak in this economy. Pretty damn impressive. They haven't lost in regulation. If you can remember way back when, November 11th, yes, 20 days ago, I guess now, that Hall of Fame game against the Pittsburgh Penguins where Casey DeSmith beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yes, that's the last goalie they've lost to is Casey DeSmith. Meantime, Detroit Red Wings forward Matt Luff, who's currently on injured reserve with a broken wrist. He's an Oakville boy, my neck of the woods, so a local product. Will join me in about 10 minutes' time. We'll shoot the shit a bit. The guy's an absolute beautician. We'll talk about his early season. Chaos, absolute chaos in the early going for Matt Luff in Detroit. He's been dinged up a couple times, a bunch of zippers, so we'll get to that story. And, of course, Uri Slafkovsky hit from earlier this year as well. So that's coming up as well. Remember to subscribe, tap that like button, and leave us a review. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. Thoughts, comments, concerns, or questions, drop us a line in the chat down below here on YouTube. We'll get to that later on in the program. And, of course, always so much to talk about when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Again, back in action coming up on Saturday night against Tampa in a rematch of round one of the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. With that in mind, let's get over the boards. So it wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. All in all, I thought it was an ugly game. I thought Toronto was chasing it for the most part. But the two things we were looking for to be achieved got achieved. Number one, the victory. They pulled it out late. I love the headline, last Mitch effort, because it was. It took until the very waning moments of this game, and Mitch Marner deposits the empty netter, extends his point streak to 18 games, Darryl Sittler and Eddie Olczyk for the franchise point streak record. It really, really is impressive what Marner's putting together right now. And I just love the fact that everybody was looking for him. And Rosie and I talked about it on the show yesterday, that more times than not, when things like this are on the line and stakes are high, players and teams are looking for a specific guy, and they tend to overpass. I thought it happened last night. I was sort of laughing too, and they talked about in the postgame how Marner, just moments before scoring that empty netter, actually gave up an empty netter. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. But at least win the game. Marner's feeling good. We'll have a chance for the point streak record coming up on Saturday. Austin Matthews, surprise, really starting to catch fire. Suddenly a 3-game goal streak for him. Ilya Samsonov made 23 stops, now 7-2-0. I thought he was surprising in coming back. I didn't expect it yesterday, but I thought it was a good time to insert him back into the lineup. Gets another victory. I thought he was really steady. Especially in that first period where I thought the Leafs were a bit behind. That typically happens in the NHL, coming off a 4-game road trip the way they did and having success. And the other bit of news, too, is Calle Jarnkrok went down in the second period, did not return with a groin injury, so that forced Sheldon Keefe to roll pretty much 3 lines for the rest of the game, having 11 forwards. But they got the job done. They're not all going to be Picassos, right? And certainly last night by any stretch was not, but they avenged that loss earlier in the season in October to the San Jose Sharks. So a big win for the Maple Leafs. Huge for Mitch Marner. Just the smile's back, right? That's the most important thing about it. The fact that back in October was a real struggle. November, a much different story for this Maple Leafs team. With that in mind, let's get some quick hitters here and thoughts from Three Hits with Rosie.
Hey folks, welcome back to Three Hits with Rosie. Breaking down the San Jose game tonight. A little bit scary at the beginning. Number one, Leafs got the job done. Got the win, 15-5. We're happy. Was this a redemption game or was this a sleeper game, as my esteemed colleague would call it? I didn't want to see any kind of reverberation back to the October days of that Western road trip that they had, where they just, let's be honest, shit their pants against some very mediocre teams. 0 scoring in the first period, tied 1-1 after the second period. I thought that the Leafs were dominating. They had the momentum. They were controlling the play, but they kept giving up these breakaways and 2-on-1s and odd man rushes. And it was like, are they going to, do the classic, be the better team and happen to give this game away in regulation? Luckily, in comes Pierre Engvall. Secondary scoring, absolutely love it. They get it done. Leafs win 15-5. They beat the team they should have, 3-win. All is well in the world. Number 2, Mitch Marner. All eyes on Mitch. Didn't look like he had a whole lot going on. Low-scoring affair. He wasn't on the score sheet. Luckily, we get ahead 2-1. Engvall puts us ahead. We knew. I was sitting with a buddy at the pub. Get Marner out there for the entire 2 minutes and 40 seconds or whatever it was. He gets not 1, not 2, but 3 looks at it, man. It usually doesn't happen with an empty net. It's usually one of those things where you just can't find it. First one, he passes it for some unknown reason. He could have airmailed that into the net. He decides to pass it, blows that up. The second one's a guarantee. It bobbled on his stick or something in the neutral zone. He couldn't find it. He couldn't pick it up. Quickly gets it before the D-man jumps on him, misses the net. We're sitting here going like this. He's not going to get this record. He's not going to do it. He'll probably have 3 points against Tampa this week, and it just won't matter because this is all gone. Gets a hold of the puck, buries it. He's his face said it all. He's laughing to himself going, my God, we all know about this streak. I just got an empty netter on my third chance. Wonderful to see. I love it. Keep the streak going. He honestly deserves it, man. He's been so solid. He just tied, Darryl Sittler and Eddie Olczyk for the, for all the hundreds and hundreds of people who've played for the Toronto Maple Leafs over the last 100 years and such. Nobody has gone on a point streak like this except for Darryl Sittler and Eddie Olczyk. And now we got the Tampa Bay Lightning next week. All eyes are on it. You're going to be the only guy to be on this long of a point streak in that tenure of the entire Toronto Maple Leafs existence. Pretty incredible. I love that he got it done. It was great to see. Number 3, Boreas Salming. I can't leave this without touching on it. It's the last tribute to him. I love the way we did at least 3 tributes to him. It was about him. Then he was in town. You saw everything that he was. I mean, I still have visions of him grabbing his mouth, trying to hold his emotions as that disease is just tearing him apart. All of his ex-teammates that played together so many decades ago, the emotion that was in them still. And it seemed like he came to Toronto and held on and got to say goodbye, and then he got back to home and let go, and he passed away. And this is our first home game since that happened. And I just can't say enough about the organization. I can't say enough about his impact on the organization and his life. And we should all be so lucky as to have lived a life like Boreas Salming and made an impact the way he did. And I just can't say enough about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Class A organization that they are and the way they honor their past is like no other. And that's one thing about being a part of that I really noticed is the way they honestly pay homage no matter what's going on in the present, what they do to their past. And there's no better example than Boreas Salming. And we're all very lucky to have been able to watch him come back and say goodbye to Toronto right before he passes away. I just don't think there's a better story. And I love that they, again, paid tribute to that. So rest in peace. God bless. And Maple Leafs forever. I love it.
My apologies there. I had the mute button on, my mistake. But I was just saying how excellent job from Rosie, a great tribute, certainly from Mitch Marner and what he put together. And I mentioned, too, that Matt Luff of the Detroit Red Wings was supposed to guest on today's show, but unfortunately, we're having some tech issues there. So we'll get to him maybe in a couple of weeks' time, certainly battling his way back from wrist surgery, a couple dingers and stitched up this season, too. But we'll get to that story maybe in the next couple of weeks. But certainly, I think when you look at the Maple Leafs perspective, Mitch Marner going for the point streak record coming up on Saturday night against Tampa Bay Lightning. So stay tuned for that. The wrap-up is brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. So happy to report I got the job done with Mitch Marner. He hit the 3 shots on goal. I was laughing at the end. I'm like, he missed the net, hit the post. I'm like, fuck, here we go. But we achieved what we were looking for when it came to Mitch Marner. So we're happy about that. Today, I'm going to look at the Colorado puck line against the Buffalo Sabres. Couple reasons for this. Number one, Buffalo played last night as referenced against Detroit. So I would think fatigue is going to play a factor. And number two, I think Colorado's going to be pissed off tonight. They're coming off just being embarrassed by the Winnipeg Jets 5-0 the other night. So I'm going to look at a response. They won the Stanley Cup last season. For my money, they're the best offense in hockey. I think they're going to lay it to the Buffalo Sabres tonight. So give me the Colorado Avalanche puck line against the Buffalo Sabres. Some pretty good value as you see there on your screen. So that's my play. Again, I think I'm going to wrap things up for this edition of Leafs Morning Take. Certainly Rosie will be back coming up on Friday's show for an extensive look at the weekend ahead for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Certainly that game on Saturday against Tampa Bay Lightning is going to be really, really fascinating on many levels. Again, the first rematch with Tampa since the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs last season. And obviously the big story with Mitch Marner looking to achieve the franchise point streak record. So make sure you tune in coming up tomorrow. Rosie's going to be back in the mix. We're going to get his thoughts. Fantastic job in terms of 3 hits with Rosie today and hit the ball out of the park. So that's going to do it. I'm Nick Alberga. Apologies for not having the Matt Luff interview, but we'll get to that in the next couple of weeks as well. He's an absolute beauty. So don't you dare miss it. If you have comments, concerns, or questions, make sure to keep hammering YouTube and liking and everything. And we'll get to your thoughts coming up. Certainly appreciate the time on today's show, and we'll talk tomorrow.